It's all right. How are you?
I'm fine, Elmo. How are you?
Good. Are you going to do the reading for us?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Nice.
We're on number 10.
Yeah, we are at number 10. We're still dealing with the extraordinary and the supernatural,
Okay.
and in which Kardec is building up enough arguments to eliminate the idea that the true, and again, I'm mentioning true because we're going to go through that today, the truth is spiritual phenomena have nothing of neither extraordinary nor supernatural. And the major challenge for especially intellectual individuals who sincerely try to get it is to eliminate the idea that the soul and therefore the physical or the spiritual phenomena belongs to this area of the extraordinary and the supernatural.
Okay. So we'll begin. Number 10. To those who regard matter as the sole power of nature, anything that cannot be explained by the laws of matter is extraordinary or supernatural. And for them, the extraordinary is synonymous with superstition. Thus, religion which is founded on the existence of an immaterial principle will be the fabric of superstition. They dare not say this out loud, but they mutter it under their breath, and they think that they can keep up appearances by claiming that religion is necessary for people and for children in order to make them wise. Hence, we are faced with two choices. Either the religious principle is true or it is false. If it is true for everybody. If it is false, it is no more beneficial for uneducated than for enlightened persons.
What Kardec's telling us here is those who are still very heterogeneous and heterogeneous enough to state that matter is the sole power of nature puts everything else in the category of extraordinary or supernatural. And in very often, Kardec calls them hypocrites here, basically, saying that they are hypocritical in their belief in religions. It is a false belief. They claim that it should be necessary for people and for children's education, but if they call the soul and the physical and the spiritual phenomena as supernatural, then they are being hypocritical for that reason.
Mm.
And it seems to me that implies here, at least at that time, that those individuals, in reality, they are materialists, have a kind of fear to be truthful to their beliefs, and they come out with this idea of this thing of like religion, something being necessary, but doesn't truly believe in it at all. Okay, questions, comments?
Okay.
I like the end of it, right? When Kardec says that you are faced with two choices. Either the religious principle is true or false, right? That's reason above all, right? If it's true for everybody.
That's right.
It's false is not useful to anyone.
That's right. You know, Kardec's basically asking us, so to say, to be truthful to ourselves, to stop being hypocritical. Or you are a spiritualist, not necessarily spiritualist, or you are purely materialist. Where do we stand? It's time to get out of the wall and take one side or another.
Okay. We'll go to 11 now. Okay. Those who attack spiritism by calling it extraordinary usually find support in the materialistic principle, and thus in denying every effect of an extra-material origin. They necessarily deny the existence of the soul. However, probe the depths of their thought and scrutinize the meanings of their words, and you will almost always find this principle, which, even if not categorically formulated, nonetheless shines through under the guise of rational philosophical pretense behind which they hide it. Therefore, by rejecting as extraordinary everything that results from the existence of the soul, they are at least being self-consistent. Since they do not admit the cause, they cannot admit the effect. Hence the prejudice that keeps them from judging Spiritism soundly, because they start from the principle of denying everything that is not material. But as for us, just because we claim that the effects result from the existence of the soul, must we therefore accept all the facts that are deemed to be extraordinary? Must we be the champions of all dreamers, of adepts of all sorts of utopias and eccentric theories? One would have to know very little about Spiritism to think so. However, this does not concern our adversaries, since the requirement that they must understand what they are talking about is of little interest to them. According to them, the extraordinary is absurd. Spiritism is based upon extraordinary facts. Therefore, Spiritism is absurd. For them, this is a sentence that cannot be appealed. They believe they're presenting an incontestable argument when, after erudite research into the convulsionaries of Saint Medard, the Camisards of St. Nares, or the nuns of London, they arrive at the discovery of fraudulent evidence that no one can contest. But are stories such as these the gospel of Spiritism? Have Spiritism's supporters ever denied that charlatanism has exploited certain incidents to its own advantage? That imagination had engendered them, that fanaticism has exaggerated many of them, but Spiritism is no more responsible for the extravagances that may be committed in its name than its true science for the abuses of ignorance, or true religion for the excesses of fanatism. Many critics only judge Spiritism in the light of fairy tales and popular legends, which are only its fictitious forms. This is the same as judging history in the light of historical romances or tragedies.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I find this item 11 extremely important, and extremely important for us spiritists. What Kardec's telling here is reinforce the necessity to be reasonable, to use reason, and to study the doctrine as a whole, all the books of the codification, so you can eliminate the absurds that comes in our atavism. Now you study in the first part today, the fear of death, the idea of heaven and hell, and those things. Those are all atavic things that we still have with ourselves. And it's not going to get rid of it easily. It does require tremendous amount of reasoning and, more important, of studies. So Kardec's telling you to one thing very important here. The materialism philosophy and the Spiritism's philosophy have some things in common. One of the things that materialism and Spiritism have in common is neither one believes that the extraordinary or the supernatural exists. Both materialism and Spiritism rejects the idea of the supernatural and the super extraordinary. If something exists, it is within the laws of nature. The problem is that materialism or materialists seems to believe that they have gained knowledge of all the laws of nature. And Spiritism, in a more humble thing, say, well, there's a lot of things that we do not know yet. But a fact is, if something exists, then it can prove its existence, it cannot be labeled as supernatural. That is an absurd. And Spiritism and materialism agrees with that, right? For the materialist, the soul, if it did exist, it would belong to the realm of the extraordinary. But since it does not exist, it could not produce an effect because there is no effect without a cause, right? That's a scientific statement. And then the soul over here, Kardec keeps using the word soul, you know that the word should be spirits, because by our definition, soul is an spirit, is an incarnated spirit, right? So I keep repeating the word that Kardec uses over here because I don't want to go against the book or different from the book. But we know that when Kardec uses the word soul over here, he refers to spirit, right? And Spiritism as a science beyond the philosophy, it proves the existence of the spirit. And since we can prove the existence of spirit, as it was covered on the first chapter, are the spirits, since we come to the conclusion that spirits does exist, so you can see the spirits being a cause, it can create an effect. And both the cause and the effect are natural, a part of nature, and function under the natural laws. So there is nothing of extraordinary or supernatural in it. Another thing that spiritists and materialists believe and agree upon is that unfortunately there are lots of charlatans. There is a lot of fraud going on. And every opportunity, many people there will use every opportunity to make a buck and to use the simplicity and ignorance of others to profit from it. So when Kardec mentioned those cases of the convulsionaries of some authority that we studied previously in the when he studied Heaven and Hell, and it's also mentioned in the Spirit's book, when the phenomenon, the spiritual phenomena is like of the nuns of London, charlatans, fraudulent individuals had to use those phenomena, that some of them are of the spiritual nature, some of them are more of the mesmerism nature, and they create fraud. They use the opportunity, the simplicity of people to make some money. And when the materialist goes and sees the evidence of a fraud and says, here is the proof that all this thing is nonsense. Here is the proof that this thing of the soul, of spirit, is all creations of the mind, and is all people trying to make a buck by using the simplicity and the ignorance of people. And the Spirit goes and says, yes, we spiritists as a science, we study all the phenomena that we see out there, and using a scientific methodology. By that I mean having a theory, developing objectives, doing experimentations and observations, since Spiritism is mostly of a science of observation, we reach conclusions. And the conclusion that we reach at a time is, yes, this is a fraud. Yes, this is illusionism. This is magic, but there are those that are also is spiritual phenomena,
Mm.
observed and proved. And we Spiritism, we care for those. We Spiritism, we select, we're able to sieve, so to say, all the things so-called phenomena out there and be able to, using scientific methodology, separate the real phenomena from everything else. So materialism and spiritualism agree. There is fraud. There is charlatans out there. Materialist stops right there. Spiritualism continues there. Science continues to investigate and is able to once demonstrate where the fraud exists, but also demonstrates where the fraud does not exist and it's a true phenomenon taking place.
Okay.
Elmo,
Yes?
I was just thinking something here, and I'm gonna need a little latitude on the question.
Mhm.
Because I was thinking the materialists and the line of thinking that they have once something that they cannot explain is supernatural. Uh, of course, it's more focused on spiritual things, but there's things that happen on this planet that uh, are materialistic and physical, and that we can explain until today. And I don't see people addressing as supernatural, such as, for example, the Egyptians, the Mayans, Incans. They've done something that even with our science nowadays, it's hard for us to explain how they get things done. And it seems there is a different view on that. So question would be why those things are not considered supernatural as well, since you build a pyramid is it's understandable, and a table turning it's something supernatural. So try to make understand this parallel on those things.
Yes, I think science as a whole and scientists, we have humbled ourselves a lot since then. Okay, at one point at the time of Kardec in the 1800s, the intellectual community become way too full of themselves to the point I forget who stated that we at that time that they had discovered everything that was to be discovered. They have everything that need to be known was already known by that time. Do you remember who said that, Ron? But it was
Oh,
but it was a statement of that time. Yes, sorry.
yeah, I'll find out.
Yeah. There was tremendous amounts of arrogance. And remember that we are finding ourselves that state of freedom from the impositions, the dogmas of an institution that repressed science for 1,000 years, right? And when they got that taste of freedom, as very often it happens, we kind of abuse, go too far to the other side, right? And so the intellectual community at that time, they say, not again. We will never allow this thing of religion, these things that they deal with God, to imprison us again. And there was this aversion towards everything that was spiritual, perhaps out of fear to come back to it, to that state of oppression, or just because no, finally you got a little taste of liberty and you have a tendency to abuse it until you learn to live it, right? So specifically when they're dealing with things that deal with spiritualism, they had an aversion to it and would not consider it at all. And I think was a very normal part of our growing at that time going on. And when dealing with other things more that did not know of, the Egyptians, the sand, the Mayans, things like that, they could not explain. They had their own explanations for that. And they were pretty comfortable with their own explanation at that time. But later on, again, we kind of humbled ourselves a little bit, and now we are more likely to accept that we know very little just about everything. You know very little about the oceans, you know very little how the Egyptians were able to do what they did. You know a lot more today than they did know in the 1800s. But I think when dealing with things of the spirit, I think it was a natural consequence of finally getting freedom from religious impositions and say, we're not touching that again, never again. But that's my explanation for that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, 'cause I was thinking, because usually those civilizations, they were very in tune with spirituality, with their, of course they have like 300 gods each one, but the I don't know if it was a religion, if we can call it religion, but there was a spirituality on those cultures, very strong, the sacrifice and everything. And none of those people were looking as a supernatural thing. It was just just the way you described it. They thought they find some sort of an explanation that was enough for them at the time, but they not, for some reason, they not uh, consider that as a spiritual thing, even though, at least from my perspective, seeing was very related with the spiritual things, all those supernatural things.
Yeah, so the explanation is, well, they would call them, the Egyptians, the Mayans, genius for being able to build the things that they built, to being able to create those calendars and to be able to develop the civilizations that they developed. For that, they would be genius. And on the other hand, they would be complete barbarians and ignorance to believe in what they would call the supernatural. So there was that part, they would call it the supernatural, when something just does not exist, and there was purely their creation. Again, because I think they have that fear of, if they touch this thing of spirituality or religiosity, they're gonna be imprisoned once again, and they don't want to go back to that 1,000 years of darkness that we experienced.
Thank you.
And I think one thing here to also to discuss is, again, words. Supernatural means beyond natural, and the natural laws, the laws of God, are perfect. So there is nothing beyond natural, supernatural. What it could be said is superhuman. Then it's beyond human comprehension and ability to do at the present time. That to be up for discussion, and we could argue about it. But supernatural means beyond natural laws, that we know that as the creation is perfect, nothing can go beyond the creation, beyond the natural.
To which both materialism and spiritism agrees.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Number 12. According to the most elementary logic, in order to discuss a matter, it is necessary to be thoroughly familiar with it, since critics' opinions are only worth anything when they speak with causal knowledge. Only in this way can their opinion, even when erroneous, be taken seriously. But what weight can it carry when it is applied to an unfamiliar matter? True critics must provide evidence, not just from erudition, but from a profound knowledge of the object under consideration, and with absolute impartiality of judgment. Otherwise, any minstrel could assume the right to judge Rossini, and any muralist could critique Raphael.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So what can I externalize that in order for us to criticize, to judge, to form an opinion concerning anything at all, one must first be familiar with that thing. We must spend some time studying, analyzing those things before you will be able to be in the position to criticize, to form a judgment, or to form an opinion about anything at all. Once you do that, then all the opinions, all the judgments, all the criticisms are valid, even if they are erroneous. And I love the guy that puts over that. Once you do a study, once you analyze, once you put time on it, then whatever you say has carries some value. Otherwise, it carries no value whatsoever. You know, and the example that he puts here is I just heard Dutra Diaz the other day saying that, you get into get in the Louvre and look at one of beautiful pictures over there, the Mona Lisa. And, and I walked there for the first time and I looked at the Mona Lisa and said, that's what it is? What is the big deal about this? And then comes somebody who is a student of arts, who went to school, who graduated in arts, look at it and stay absolutely awe, describe all the beauty, all the perfection, all the marvelous work of that art over there. And I would be like, this guy gotta be crazy. I don't see anything like that. Why? Because I'm not in the position of criticize what I don't know. If my opinion of the Mona Lisa has much value as a dog barking in Brownville, Texas. I know nothing of it. But once I put myself, take time to understand a little bit of the art, then my opinion carries some value, even if it's wrong. But the opinion of that guy that comes next to me, who is a connoisseur of arts, then it carries immense amount of value. He may like, he may dislike, whatever, it carries value because he understands, he knows what he's talking about. And that's extremely important, and I'm going to go see later on that one of the things, especially in the book, What's Spiritism, Kardec keeps going back to say, yeah, well, we can argue, can discuss Spiritism. I would love to do that after you read the books. You come to me and talk about things that you don't know nothing of it. You criticize things that have not even opened a book to read. How can you come to me and criticize something that you don't know? And that's something that is very important for us, spiritists as well, to not really be, as Jesus said, be throwing pearls to pigs. If you're not interested, the books are there. You can get into online. If you're not interested in it and you want to criticize, I'm just not going to pay attention to you. I'm just going to completely ignore you. Now, if you tell me, I read a book and that's my impression of it, then we have a discussion. Agreeing or disagreeing.
Yeah, this was it's complicated in the sense that when, for example, when I talk with people different religion, one thing that I get a lot is I read the Bible, whatever book they read, and it makes sense to me, and I'm satisfied. There's no reason for me to know other religion because that fulfills me and gave me all the answer that I need. So, and you know, most people, they are born into a religion, so they get that from their parents or whatever, and you know, and they believe that to be the truth. So, you know, it was the other day, not the other day, I was thinking, you know, when people we start to talk about religion, they don't want to, you know, have an open mind of what spiritism is, and you know, I try to give us, you know, as little as, you know, as much as they can grasp. And sometimes I was thinking, oh my God, right? You know, judge them for not at least trying or have an open mind. But then when I see, for example, a radical religion that, you know, are killing people, throwing bombs or whatever, I also judge without knowing, without understanding, without, as you say, reading a book or trying to, you know, have the perspective of them. But I think most of us, we are, we don't give us the proper chance to get to know the other side, other religions there, and different points of view, because in truth we are in whatever religion we are right now, and we believe that's to be the whole truth, let's put that way, and in fact it's not. So I think that's it makes hard and creates a lot of conflict.
Did you listen to the lecture you had on Sunday with Dacio
No.
and Dolly? Yeah, I think it's very valuable for everyone to this specific discussion if you get that chance to go back in there. I love the way he brought definitions, and in those definitions say you clearly understand why spiritism is not a religion, right? And he he put the position that in the spiritism that developed within us, a sense of not depending in anyone anymore. Um, and it may be arrogant in the eyes of many, and we who seek to be humbled, or you feel a little bit scared to say that. But the truth is, to embrace spiritism, it requires a certain intellectual and spiritual maturity. Not saying over here that we are on the no the best. Not saying that at all. But in order for us to embrace, for anyone at all, to embrace spiritism, to dedicate it to study, to understand the spiritism, and to be agreeable with most, at least most, of the philosophy of spiritism, it requires a certain degree of intellectual and spiritual maturity. If we have not got to this level of maturity, thank God that there are other religions over there are other institutions over there that bring to them the comfort that they need. If they come to us and say, this brings me all the answers that I want, if they bring all the comfort that I need, I'm happy here. That's the end of the conversation. If the idea of having someone being the judge of them, if the idea of someone being the one who puts them in one another place is comfortable for them at that level, good for them, excellent. But once we start questioning more, we're not gonna find all the answers on those religions or those institutions any longer. Then you're gonna look for something else. And if you look, you find spiritism. Of course, I am a bias, okay, but I think spiritism offers almost all the, if not all the answer, all the questions that we could be asking ourselves about ourselves, where you are right now, why we are the way we are, where we going from here, all those philosophical questions. Spiritism, to me, satisfactorily explains everything, and that's why I'm here. If tomorrow I find questions the spirit just cannot answer, and I find it somewhere else, I would be very hypocrite to stay here. I would have to go to that other thing. So if those individuals are comfortable where they come to me and say to me, I'm very comfortable where I am, it answers all my questions, beautiful, stay there. And to me, it's the end of this discussion right there as well. It may be, again, it may be arrogant, it may, but to me, it's a fact to get to this level in which I accept that everything that happens to me, good and bad, is my own doing. That wherever I go from here, I am building that step by step. It's a big step. It's much more comfortable saying that it's someone else doing, it's someone placing me here and here or there, because it takes the responsibility from me. And that requires a certain degree of maturity.
Yeah, I know. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's God's fault is an easy answer, is an easy way out. I always found that.
Yeah.
Renato, if you want to hear or read a little bit more about the same concept that Elmo so well explained about the Superman. I don't know what is the name in English, but in German it's also Sprach zu Zarathustra. It's a book by Nietzsche. I don't know what it's called in English. We have to look it up. I can send you a link. But it's essentially what Elmo was saying, that this idea of someone who doesn't achieve a point of perfection, but it's and it's interesting because it's written at the same time the Kardec books were a little later than the Kardec books were written, but at the same time brings up the whole idea of the Superman and in dealing with the current situation of the 19th century, essentially, which is a little bit what we still deal with today. That's all. Thank you.
Especially Nietzsche, those guys, they really have thought they have figured everything out at that point, that you no longer need God, we have science. That was a common statement.
Yeah, just want to piggyback what Elmo says, because I really struggle with to keeping in check my thoughts regarding not think that Spiritism is the Holy Grail, that everything else is just they are in their level, they're gonna get to the point that the Spiritism will be just the answer for everything. I remember when I for a period of time I was jumping through different religions just to see differences, and I got to a point that for myself, none of those were able to give me the answers and that would make sense. I'm not saying to satisfy myself, because I'm not looking for satisfaction. I was just looking for something to make sense, and only in the Spiritism so far I couldn't find that. But sometimes it's hard when you are talking to people. I have my family a lot of people that they have ex-religion. It's really and I think sometimes they want to engage in a conversation. I don't know what's the goal, but I'm kind of sometimes it's really hard to, but what comes in my mind is like, I'm not gonna waste my time. And sometimes I feel like I'm being arrogant on that. So I agree with you. It's very hard to, uh, try to be proactive and, try to engage, as long as they want to. Because I truly believe that spirit is the answers for, at least for the level that I am right now, to all my questions.
Yeah, but and I think if a person shows a sincere interest and have a discussion with open mind, yeah, go ahead. I think it's valuable to expose our point of view and be open to receive someone else's point of view as well. But my fear is very often those individuals come with a completely closed mind and come with with hands full with stones, ready to stone us because of our beliefs. That's when those are the ones which we would not engage in any confrontation. If individuals are open-minded to discuss, yeah, it's great, it's wonderful. Okay, let's go.
Okay. 13. 13. Okay. Therefore, Spiritism does not accept all facts that may be regarded as extraordinary or supernatural. Far from it. Instead, it demonstrates the impossibility of a great number of them and the foolishness of some of the beliefs that comprise superstition per se. It is true that among the spirit phenomenon that Spiritism accepts, there are some that disbelievers regard as unequivocally extraordinary in nature. In other words, they represent superstition, as they wish. However, they should at least limit the discussion to these, because they have nothing to say regarding the others. They would be preaching to the already converted. By criticizing what Spiritism itself refutes, they demonstrate their ignorance about the subject and they miss the mark. But how far can Spiritist belief reach? You will ask. Read and observe, and you will understand. Acquiring any science demands time and study, and Spiritism, which addresses the most serious questions of philosophy in every sector of social order, and which comprises both the physical and moral individual at the same time, is a complete science and philosophy in itself, and it cannot be assimilated in only a few hours, which is true of any other science. It would be very childish to see the whole of Spiritism in a turning table, just as it would be to see the whole of physics in a few children's toys. For whoever does not want to remain on the surface, months and years rather than hours will have to be spent in order to probe all its mysteries. In light of this, decide for yourself the degree of understanding and the value of the opinions of those who assume for themselves the right to judge simply because they have seen one or two experiments by way of entertainment or as a pastime. No doubt, they will state that they do not have the time needed for such study. As they wish, nothing so obliges them. However, if you do not have time to learn about a matter, you cannot talk about it, let alone make judgments about it, unless you want to be accused of being irresponsible. The more elevated the position you acquire in science, the less excusable you will be if you thoughtlessly try to address a subject with which you are unfamiliar.
Thanks. So again, it is through using a scientific methodology, creating a hypothesis, and from that hypothesis develop objectives, and then through observation, through experimentation, through repetitions, reach conclusions. So spiritism as a science, and it's able to sieve all the phenomena, put all the phenomena in one bag, and through observation of each one of them, by using observation, by using experimentation, by analyzing repetitions, we can separate what's true phenomena and what is anything else. Superstitions, human imagination, charlatanism, fraud, whatever it is. Spiritism is able to separate facts from fiction. Is able to separate the true phenomena from the so-called superstitions. And Spiritism is the first one who truly make a point of eliminating anything else that is not proved scientifically to be a fact, okay, to be a part of its doctrine. And it's even basically a, how do I say that, is a self-protecting mechanism in itself. Spiritists must to do that, and spiritists must to do that. It is absolutely required, in my opinion here, that an spiritist do that very carefully. Eliminate anything that is mythical, anything that is mystical, anything that does not go along with reason, should not be part of the doctrine. And that's why in Spiritism there is no rituals. If you do something, we should be able to give a reasoning for it. There has to be a reason for anything that we do in Spiritism. So we do the passes. Is it a ritual? Not in our understanding, not in our science. Has been observed through mediums that there is energy as carried through one individual to another, more important to spirits to another spirits. That has been shown to be a thing. So it's not a ritual, it's not a superstition, it's a fact. But I don't believe it. Well, it's your prerogative. You don't have to believe it. We pray. Why do you pray? Again, there is plenty of studies being done now looking at the effect of prayers already, especially in the medical studies now. There is a lot of universities developing studies on the efficacy of prayer in health, and it has been proved consistently to have its value. So it's not just a superstition, it's not just a mythical thing, because if it was, Spiritism would have to take it away from it. It should not be part of Spiritism. And for those who criticize Spiritism, they think that Spiritism is the first one to reject. The Spiritism is the first one to reject the rituals, the superstitions, the supernatural, again, as even a self-protecting mechanism. But just because it does not go along with reason as well. And as was discussed in the item 12, very often the problem is that those who are creating those allegations against Spiritism are the ones who have not read the books, are the ones who have not put the necessary time to understand more of the doctrine before they go ahead and start talking. So they basically talking of what they do not know. And for those who are talking for the things they do not know, the best thing for us is to ignore them. And it's interesting that Kardec, when he makes the comparison, let me find and read here. Yeah, it would be very childish to see the whole all of Spiritism in a turning table, just as it would be to see the whole of physics in a few children toys. My perception is that Kardec does not put turning tables in children toys just by luck. He is making a very strong statement here, in my opinion, he is telling us that the same way that children's toys was at one point very important in our development, it plays a very key part in our maturation process. So did the turntables in the maturation, the development of Spiritism itself. And just like it no longer, the children's toy doesn't no longer serve an adult man, or at least it shouldn't, because you have grown, you have passed that. So should we, spiritists, behave towards the turntables? Those little physical phenomena that attract our attention was extremely important. Is pivotal for maturity development of the doctrine, but we should have matured, and not now, 2020. Kardec, when he was writing this book already, the second book of the doctrine, he was already say, leave the little children toys behind now. If carry those, not enough, move on. And through this, especially through this book, we're going to understand that we can have the psychophonies, we can have, more important, the psychographies that are much more relevant, that are more important for the maturation of the spirituals of anyone who seeks to develop them, themselves. And I think is again, this message here is very up to date for us spiritists. When he says, acquiring any science demands time and study, and Spiritism, which addresses the most serious questions of philosophy in every sector of social order, and which encompasses both the physical and the moral individual at the same time, is a complete science and philosophy in itself, and it cannot be assimilated only by a few hours. Starting us, to get to understand this doctrine, basically you never end the studies because of the complexity of what it encompasses. It encompasses life, basically, physical and moral. So the idea that we can pick up one of André Luiz's romances, read and say, oh, now I understand the Spiritism, you're nothing but a fool. The complexity of the discussions suggested in the Spiritism requires a life of study.
They say that for you to become a specialist in anything, you have to study 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah. What about life? Be specialist in life. Physical and spiritual.
Many lives.
Many lives. And
So,
Eternity.
so in a sense, I mean, aside from religions that we experienced before got to Spiritism, that we spend years, a few years, a couple years, whatever, before get to this point, we pretty much cannot comment on other religions. So for us, it's better just to stay quiet, because we don't have the knowledge, and we don't have the know-how to comment on somebody else's religion and beliefs, aside from what we have. So it's more of I think, acceptance than try to understand, because at this point we're not gonna invest time to understand different religions, since we have so much to learn in our own religion, right?
I think also, Renato, I'm sorry, Elmo, just to before, it's just I think the difference too is we wouldn't be trying to convert people to become spiritism, which any religion will try to convert you to their beliefs. And spiritism doesn't subscribe to that idea that you have to, convince people by. This is the way, at least, that I see it. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree. First thing is, again, refer to Dacio's lecture. Spiritism is not a religion. Spiritism is something that is a tool for us to develop ourselves intellectually and morally without being a religion. Because a religion is we with others, according to Dacio, and I love that statement. And Spiritism, it's we with ourselves. So in that aspect, Spiritism is not a religion, because it's not we with others, it's we with ourselves. Anytime someone seems to be sincere on a discussion of any topic, I think it's valid. In Brazil, they used to say that we cannot argue soccer, politics, and religion. And I ask, what's left then? What are we going to discuss? The colors of the Mona Lisa? I don't know. So everything should be discussed. That's how we're going to learn from one another, as long as both parts agree to disagree, agree to be open-minded, to give and receive equally. I'm sure we can learn from other religions. I had doing some reading on Confucianism, and I tell them I fall in love with that thing. I think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I learned a lot from it. But I think Spiritism is the best. And I would be a fool not to think so. If I'm practicing Spiritism, think that something is better than Spiritism. Why am I here then? I'm here because I think it's the best. If someone is open-minded to discuss anything, an evangelical, a Catholic, a Buddhist, yes, let's discuss, let's talk about it. Let's agree to disagree, but let's come without stones in our hands. If I see that people come with stones at their hands trying to hurt me, I'm not going to be a part of it.
I agree, Renato, in the sense that we shouldn't criticize what we don't know, but some basics of other religions we know and we can discuss, right? So when someone comes to you and says that there is heaven, there is hell, and there is purgatory, and that's my beliefs, you can enter into a discussion of why. Explain better to me of if you're willing. But to say that we fully understand all the Jewish religion, is just, you just have to look at Alvaro's lectures to see that we know nothing about it. So yeah, I agree. We have to discuss, but we should avoid criticizing what we don't fully understand, like Kardec told the others about Spiritism. If you never read Spiritism, why you criticize? Criticize what you don't know.
Yeah, and I think we can learn from everyone if you just be open-minded and pick up little pearls here and there from everyone else. But again, we need to free ourselves from our biases and agree to disagree when we cannot be agreeable.
Okay.
All right, I think we're done in over a minute.
Mm.
Does anyone want to make our final prayer?
I'll say the final prayer, Elmo.
Thank you.
You're welcome. To our Heavenly Father, spiritual benefactors, all that have come here in assistance to our studies tonight, being grateful for our teachers and our mentors, continuing their stance and giving us all that they have, helping us and assisting us in our daily lives, understanding concept or what Spiritism is through all the books and knowledge. We are so grateful, dear Father. We ask as we continue throughout the week with our studies and our prayers, and especially to dedicate ourselves for part of helping our planet Earth now that's going through so much. May we be able to assist with our prayers, with our strength and our love and charity. We thank you, dear Father, for the peace, the serenity that you give us as we go through our studies and review and study our work. Thank you, dear Lord. And as we end our prayer here today, we ask that we continue to send our prayers to our loved ones, our teachers, the Spiritist Confederation, United States Spiritist Confederation, for our council, all the prayers that we do for prayers in box in the Spiritist group. Continue our thoughts with them also in all that surrounds us. We thank you, dear Lord, and we ask as we leave here today, be able to keep ourselves focused and alert with all that they have given us throughout our studies. We thank you, dear Lord, and with that in mind, we ask permission to close our meeting tonight. So be it.